Alright, let's dive into this story and watch how a simple survival training mission turns into an absolute nightmare. Conjured shields. Suddenly, a massive object crashes down right in front of him, forcing him to duck quickly. The dust clears, he finds himself staring at a giant golem standing right before him. Oscar completely panics at the sight when suddenly a stunning red-haired mage descends from above, lands gracefully on the giant creature's shoulder, demanding to know what he is doing in her workshop. Now pay close attention here, because things get incredibly tense as the monster shifts to combat mode while she accuses him of being a spy, warns him to choose his words carefully, because his very survival depends on how he answers. Oscar stares at her, recognizes her instantly from the endless war rumors he heard in his past. He is a legendary hero from the frozen north, famous for being a literal one-woman army thanks to her massive golem. We are talking about the creation mage, Isabel, who can take on 1,000 soldiers with her construct. Before he can even react, he ends up chained inside Isabel's hideout as she begins interrogating him ruthlessly, while the others cast spells, acting like they were putting on some legendary display of elite magic. He never imagined meeting her like this. Now she furiously demands to know which faction he belongs to. Oscar is still processing the situation, which completely irritates the highly impatient Isabel. He activates a magic circle beneath his feet, ordering him to speak if he wants to avoid pain. Terrified, he begs her to calm down, pointing out he did not resist capture, so he is clearly not her enemy, but that only angers her more. Raising her wand, she conjures a massive roaring fireball, right as she is about to roast him. She calls him a third-rate mage, making Oscar desperately shout that he is not even a mage yet. Belle freezes when she hears this, but instantly assumes he is just trying to lie to her. Grabbing his head to inspect his circuits, she realizes he was telling the truth. There is not a drop of mana in him. A bit later, they sit down for a quiet drink, and she immediately warns him not to expect any apology from her. Isabel explains she just took a teaching job at the academy, and now everyone around her wants to sabotage her. When a beast slips past and targets Lily, Oscar steps in and kills it with one fiery slash, yet the real nightmare is just waking up. Oscar is genuinely shocked to hear that she is already a professor at the highly prestigious Magic Academy. She proudly replies that she only accepted the role because it will make funding her golem research much easier. Think about this with me for Oscar. This is the golden opportunity he desperately needed, because studying under her is the key to finally awakening the mana inside his body. Without hesitation, he takes a leap of faith and asks her directly to teach him how to control his energy. But she flatly rejects him, claiming she has zero interest in weak people who lack even a speck of talent, ordering him to finish his drink and leave. He knows deep down he cannot let this single opportunity slip away. Just then, she asks her servant Golem for more tea, while Oscar desperately tries to think of a way to convince her. Suddenly, a strange flaw on the robot's right shoulder and stands up to warn her, furiously snaps at him. Now pay attention here, because a massive dragon suddenly appears and everyone utterly loses hope, even that arrogant Levin, asking if he is making up nonsense to grab her attention. But before she can finish, the robot pours tea right on her head. Oscar panics and rushes to help her. Knowing full well that the beverage is boiling hot, he asks if she is all right and points out that the right shoulder joints are completely clogged. He comes down to inspect the area and realizes he is correct, demanding to know how he detected that obscure defect. Overcome with curiosity, she grabs his arm, demanding answers, while he simply replies that he saw a highly abnormal flow of mana. That is when she realizes his incredible gift. And believe me, you and I are only seeing the start of this wild ride. Stick with me as we watch Oscar realize that while mana is invisible to others, he can see it effortlessly. Belle gasps, finally understanding exactly how Oscar managed to. Defenses rely on manipulating the invisible mana floating in the air to activate. Oscar starts wondering if this is the so-called talent that Wicked Mage talked about before killing him. He cowers inside a stone shell like a scared turtle, trying to save himself. After a brief pause, Isabel smirks and promises Oscar that she will teach him to master mana herself. Oscar is completely stunned, especially since just moments ago she was about to kick him out for good. She makes it clear that she only loathes weak and useless men, but he has actually sparked her curiosity. The two seal the deal with an immediate handshake, and she brings him straight to her lecture hall, where two massive golems hold up a giant blackboard as she explains how his living body will naturally absorb mana, leaving him to wonder how on earth he is supposed to circulate it through his magic pathways, reminding him that obviously you can't pour tea if you don't even have a cup. The mana only starts flowing once you introduce a highly specific magic formula. Isabel pulls out a magic scroll inscribed with a very unique spell, the exact one she hands to Academy beginners, and Oscar takes it eagerly, curious to know what kind of magic lies within. Trapped with no help and a dragon ready to roast them alive, Isabel decides to keep it a secret, telling him it will be a major surprise once he actually succeeds. To feel the power circulating inside his body and visualize pouring it directly into the inscribed spell. And Oscar, full of excitement, replies that he is definitely going to try. Deep down, she knows this task usually takes a whole month, but hopes that if he is truly talented, he might do it in 2 weeks. Oscar lays the scroll flat on the floor, following her guidance to feel the energy coursing deep within his core. Compares this feeling to the exact moment he refines his own sword aura. All he has to do is focus, closing his eyes to let the mana stream out and ignite the magic circle. Just as she predicted, the mana triggers the formula on the paper, unleashing a blinding flash of bright light. Basically, controlling mana is like learning to walk all over again, and nobody is born knowing how to do it. A normal person would stumble countless times before figuring out how to balance their own weight and stand tall. Oscar steps forward. Keeping completely cool, he analyzes how the beast gathers mana for its breath attack. Look at this. Isabel watches Oscar pass the entire test in literal minutes and is left frozen in absolute shock. Legendary magic prodigies grasp mana faster than anyone, but she never imagined Oscar would pull it off on his first attempt. Wonders if this crazy feat is simply because he can see the mana drifting around them, though she quickly drops the thought since even that cannot explain this madness, forcing her to accept she is facing a literal monster genius. Isabel rushes over to pat him firmly on the back, congratulating him for triggering the spell instantly, but suddenly Oscar's excitement vanishes as he mutters that this is not nearly enough. Isabel is deeply confused, but Oscar explains that the magic he just cast lacked any real beauty. He recalls the spell casting he witnessed during his childhood, describing how gorgeous it was compared to this clumsy attempt. Pointing at the magic circle, he insists something is off, feeling just as wrong as that golem's damaged shoulder. Turns back to Isabel to ask for her thoughts on the matter. Then he applies his own magic theory to focus the energy as if he were shaping a sword. Isabel is so incredibly stunned she cannot even gather her thoughts to reply. Oscar adds that he has realized a simple truth: his goal is not just to become an average mage, but someone who casts flawless, beautiful magic. His eyes gleam with passion, and Isabel sarcastically fires back that he should have just rewritten the formula if he felt it was so flawed. Billy dashes over to Isabel, demanding to know how he can start drawing his own magic circles. Later on, Brian walks through the mansion only to find all of Oscar's training partners completely wiped out on the floor. He approaches to ask what happened, and while they panic and try to dodge the question, Brian demands to know the truth. The exhausted squad finally confesses that Oscar absolutely destroyed all of them without breaking a sweat, and can barely believe his ears and leaves, telling them to heal up so they don't ruin tomorrow's scheduled practice. Unseen by anyone, Brian smiles proudly, realizing the time has finally come to pass down the sword key to his son. Meanwhile, Oscar continues training hard under Isabel's strict guidance. The beast unleashes fire, but Oscar counters with a blazing magic shot that pierces the flames, obliterating the dragon instantly. And trust me, you and I are about to see just how much insane effort it takes to master magic. Let's dive into this epic tale as Isabel tells him he has talent and can borrow any book he wants. Oscar gets incredibly excited hearing this and asks if she is absolutely sure, which she happily confirms. She proudly boasts that all of her knowledge is inside those volumes, giving him total freedom to take whatever he likes. But she quickly regrets her words because Oscar wastes zero time and starts packing almost every single book he finds. Isabelle tries to complain, but he reminds her of her own promise. Suddenly, her playful mood completely vanishes as she gives him a deadly serious warning about a matter of life and death. Warns him that since mana is now flowing through his circuits, making him an official mage, he must be extremely careful when handling the sword art if he wants to survive. In his past life, Oscar had returned to his village only to find his father bedridden and clinging to life. His father had gestured for him to come closer, whispering a final confession about his immense talent for magic. In that instant, right then they realized the commoner they mocked was actually a monster. Let's rewind to see how a 14-year-old boy pulled this off. Brian realized he had made a terrible mistake by forcing his son to abandon his magical gift. This time, Oscar is facing his father head-on. Now, pay attention here, because the tense moment of asking for his signature is about to begin. His father coldly asks what he wants, and Oscar directly replies that he needs his signature on the application. Brian takes the paper expecting to see the Sword Academy application, but instead finds the one for magic. With a calm smile, Oscar explains to his father that entering the Magic Academy is impossible without his signature, and holds his head in pure frustration, asking why he would choose magic when born as a swordmaster's son. Oscar then asks his father if he remembers when he confessed that his true desire was to practice magic, and throws the letter to the ground with pure contempt, calling his dream nothing but a childish fantasy. Brian tries to grab his son to forcefully eject the sword art, but he gets instantly repelled by Oscar's flowing mana. Shocked, Brian yells, asking if he has already mastered mana, and Oscar confesses he did this because there was no other way to convince him. Low-level monsters are running wild, but each squad leader has a magic talisman to summon help and erect a barrier. In this world, every warrior must choose between two paths. Hearing those words, Brian completely loses his temper, mentioning that rumors already reached him about Oscar defeating his own brothers. Brian admits he has massive talent for beating swordsmen without using the sword art. Oscar says he knows, but Brian furiously insists his son does not understand the real danger. Brian screams in frustration, insisting that success is guaranteed if he chooses the sword, points out that success does not always guarantee a person's happiness. Brian gets desperate and, as you and I probably guessed, completely loses his patience right then and there, realizes that if he acts quickly, he can still correct his son's massive mistake. He warns Oscar that he won't sit back and watch him choose the wrong path, so he'll beat some sense into him. Brian draws his sword, telling him that while he might not understand these actions right now, he is absolutely convinced that the day will come when he will be deeply grateful. Become a mage with incredible magical powers, or a swordsman relying on physical strength and deadly techniques. Boy Oscar chose the blade. Oscar whispers to himself, knowing that day never came and the sword only brought death. Brian then orders him to draw his weapon, but Oscar takes a deep breath before tossing the Sword Academy application into the fire, firmly reminding him that he is already a mage, saying he is curious to see if a beating can truly destroy his burning desire to be a mage. Brian decides to show him what he is made of, annoyed because he thinks his son is acting arrogant just for resisting his sword art. Brian charges forward with a devastating slash, but Oscar dodges it easily, leaving his father completely stunned. Basically, Oscar can predict every single one of his father's movements with crystal clarity as he swings his weapon and keeps unleashing fierce thrusts, but Oscar dodges effortlessly, having copied his father's style in his past life to read his attacks perfectly now. Moments later, Brian stops his offensive, admitting he can see that Oscar's words were not just an empty bluff. He admits that dodging like that without using the sword art to strengthen his body is something nobody else in the guild could ever do. From a young age, he trained relentlessly until he became a legendary sword saint, and reiterates that his talent with a blade is absolutely colossal, which is why he is willing to risk everything to put him on the warrior's path. Brian's aura overflows as he gets completely serious, demanding that Oscar accept the sword art right this second. But Oscar coldly reminds him that he swore he would beat those ridiculous mage ambitions right out of him, if he wants him to surrender, just because he cannot land a single blow, making Brian even more furious. Oscar reminds him that if Talent is everything. You and I are about to see who wins this battle. And I are about to watch Oscar stand his ground. His dad mocks him, asking if he will use his wand as a sword. Oscar proudly tells his father that what he is holding is indeed his wand, even if it is just a beginner's tool. Lacks the knowledge to cast real spells yet, but he figures his dad is in the exact same boat. Basically, since he has no clue what he is doing, there is no way his father can predict his next move. The ultimate title for any warrior. Was highly respected, defeated unstoppable beasts, and lived a dream life, and charges forward with insane speed, trying to slip behind Oscar and catch him completely off guard. Oscar reacts instantly and dodges the blow clean. With his father completely wide open, Oscar points his wand directly at his face, ready to unleash the very first spell he ever saw and dreamed of. The spell is just a simple spark, but powered by his pure determination, he successfully brings it to life. He shoots a blinding flash straight into his father's eyes, and while Brian is completely blind, Oscar quickly slips behind his back. Brian reacts purely on instinct, suddenly realizing that the cheap magic trick was actually just a clever distraction. Oscar is already behind him, and with a swift strike, he knocks the sword away, leaving his dad disarmed. Frustrated, Brian asks if his real goal from the very beginning was to disarm him like this. Now here is the best part. Watch how Oscar reminds him that hiding your true goal is exactly what he taught him. Brian admits he has undeniable talent with the sword, but questions who can guarantee he has any gift for magic. Yet despite his massive success, Oscar secretly regretted his choice, to which Oscar simply replies that he only wanted to show him the path he truly wishes to walk. He asks if Brian became a swordsman because someone guaranteed his talent, a question that hits his father's pride hard. Brian suddenly remembers a conversation with Oscar's mother, back when the boy was still in her womb, and wanted his son to be a swordsman, but his wife reminded him that he only chose the sword because he thought it was cool, didn't choose their son's life for him. He insisted that Oscar should choose his own path. Remembering this, Brian smiles, admitting he really hoped to see his son become a great sword saint. Brian walks over to where the academy application fell, and Oscar worries his dad is going to tear it to pieces. However, Brian completely surprises him by revealing that he actually plans to sign the papers. Meanwhile, back at the academy, the professors gather to discuss the incoming class of new students, and they all agree that this generation of students is truly exceptional. I know what you're thinking, but get this, his true passion was always magic. One of the teachers, a rather creepy guy wearing the exact same necklace as the man who killed Oscar, agrees that they are all very impressive. At the same time, Oscar spends his days studying incredibly hard at home. Months later, Oscar finally prepares to head out, and his father comes to give him a formal farewell, warns him that just as he trained with the blade, others have spent years refining their magical power. He admits he is not one to preach, but begs Oscar to never stray from the path he chose for himself. He smiles and reassures him he will be fine, since he cannot imagine anyone being more terrifying than his own dad, and smiles and sighs with relief. After wrapping up that emotional father-son moment, Oscar turns around and finally sets off. I know you and I are both glad to see him smiling, ready to enter his dream academy. Soon after, Oscar arrives at the Kirk Imperial Magic Academy and is completely blown away by how different everything is. There are students soaring on broomsticks and tiny creatures marching around, playing various musical instruments. Everything shatters when mysterious enemies ambush him, led by a man with a strange necklace. He is overwhelmed because they planned every detail. Oscar is absolutely amazed, as this place is the total opposite of that rigid academy for swordsmen. He approaches the tiny figures, wondering what magic powers them, since they look a lot like golems. Isabel sneaks up behind him, warning that he will miss registration if he keeps daydreaming. He jumps up, thrilled to see his teacher, while she asks if he has been slacking off since she left. He proudly reassures her that he can do so much more than he could 6 months ago. Isabel replies that she is looking forward to seeing that progress, so she asks him to surprise her like before, pointing down the hall toward the entrance exam. Oscar looks at her with confusion and asks what she means by that, and she explains that the freshmen are split into 2 groups based on whether they have mana. Above those groups is the first-class tier, reserved solely for the most gifted elite students. Amidst the chaos, warns him to skip that exam, and trust me, You and I are left wondering the exact same thing. Why? Join me today as Isabel warns Oscar about the terrifying first-class monsters. To her, they are monsters, elite mages trained in magic since early childhood. Oscar gets incredibly excited hearing this, realizing he can learn super advanced magic there. Isabel just holds her head in frustration, realizing it is completely useless to change his mind. Ultimately, she tells him to go look if he is curious, and Oscar heads straight toward the testing area. Arriving there, he sees a candidate knock down a bunch of balloons using bursts of magic, and he realizes the exam simply requires hitting the targets with magic. And so he gets a strange feeling that everyone in the room is watching him. Suddenly, an insufferable white-haired noble named Zazan Galosis approaches, sneering that a commoner has no business taking this exam. The young disciple gets dragged into the fight, forcing him to protect her at the cost of his life. Facing death, his regret hurts the most. Demands Oscar leave, but Oscar defends himself, saying he heard any student could be accepted. Zazan sneers with contempt, snapping that he is nothing but an insolent talker. Pay close attention here, because Oscar is about to experience firsthand the terrible discrimination non-nobles have to face. Zan pushes Oscar aside, claiming it is his turn, and ordering him to watch silently as the examiner Ruth prepares the test. Smugly, Zazan tells Oscar that the first class is reserved for those who dedicate their entire lives to magic, wanting him to see the massive gap created by years of hard effort. Zazan unleashes his powerful ice magic, instantly freezing all the targets and leaving the surrounding students completely stunned by the massive demonstration. They all begin praising him immediately, showering his family with compliments and whispering about the immense power of House Galosis. Some even mutter that Zazan has not even revealed a tiny fraction of his true hidden power. Hearing the gasps of amazement, Zazan walks back over to Oscar with pure, arrogant pride, telling him he should understand that someone who cannot cast decent magic is not welcome here. But Oscar responds completely unfazed. He mastered the sword but never understood magic, and that lack of knowledge cost him everything. Admitting that his magic is indeed impressive, and that he is finally seeing the power of someone who has dedicated everything to it. However, he calmly adds that the entire display was an absolute waste of energy, leaving Zazan completely shocked. Oscar simply walks past him, knowing exactly how much real effort and dedicated time are actually worth. Honestly, he was actually worried about whether he could qualify for this prestigious first class. I know exactly what you are thinking right now. Is he going to chicken out? Not a chance, he draws his wand with a smile. They mock his beginner level wand, whispering that it is impossible to hit any of the targets with that garbage. Meanwhile, Zazan begins overthinking Oscar's harsh words desperately, trying to convince himself that his own magic is absolutely flawless. Makes him second guess his technique, even though he is certain his ice magic should have 0 errors, confident he is far superior to Oscar and shouldn't waste time on his nonsense. Meanwhile, Ruth is actually quite impressed by Zazan's high skill level, but there's a catch. They burn that paper, their entire squad gets kicked out of the elite class immediately. Then, finally understanding why the other professors kept saying this year's new recruits are absolutely spectacular, he assumes Zazan is practically guaranteed to secure the position as the top representative of the first years. Right then, she notices Oscar standing completely still, making her wonder what on earth he is planning to do. Onlookers are already shouting insults, urging him to just give up. But Ruth suspects he is waiting for the perfect moment, sensing absolutely 0 impatience in his quiet posture. Once he finishes analyzing the field, Oscar finally unleashes his fire bullet spell. Burning projectile flies at insane speed, piercing straight through every single target in one clean shot. Every target falls shattered, leaving Ruth completely stunned, because the strike was so incredibly fast that nobody even saw it. Nobody understands what just happened, and even though Oscar cleanly took down all 5 targets, students refused to acknowledge his skill, complaining that he only left some tiny holes behind. They look down on him, claiming he could never pass with something so pathetic. Fate grants him a second chance. Instead of dying, Oscar wakes up in the past with his memories completely intact. Zazan turns to leave in complete disappointment, having expected to witness some truly spectacular magic. Oscar looks at Ruth and asks if he failed, but she confidently reassures him that hitting all 5 targets means he passed, then asks why he didn't shoot them one by one, knowing full well he was capable of doing so. Warning him she won't accept luck as an answer, Oscar replies that while Zazan's magic is amazing, using so much mana for a simple test was a massive waste of energy, leaving Ruth completely baffled by his practical logic. And that's how he shows us that, in a real battle against monsters, efficiency is everything. Come along with me as we watch our main character control his mana with one goal: survival on the battlefield. This logic leaves Ruth totally speechless. He apologizes for holding him up, lets him leave. And as Oscar walks away, Ruth is completely amazed. Oscar predicted every single move, showing the perfect patience to wait for the exact right moment. On top of that, his mana control is so incredibly precise that he hits the target dead center. Oscar looks around, baffled to be alive, and quickly realizes he is back in his hometown. Ruth admits that Oscar's magic is not flashy or overly complex. Looking at him, he only sees someone with absolutely monstrous talent. Meanwhile, Oscar thinks about how amazing Ruth was, controlling so many targets completely on his own. Suddenly, Oscar senses eyes on him and demands to know who is there. A mysterious voice echoes, praising him for his sharp instincts. Right then, an old man floats down and introduces himself as Balsamus, the Academy director. Bows immediately, apologizing for his lack of respect in not recognizing him sooner, brushes it off, admitting he was the one eavesdropping on their conversation from the very start. Suddenly, Oscar notices a strange pendant hanging around the director's neck and recognizes it instantly. Emma spots his sudden stiffness and asks if something is wrong. The director offers a hand for a formal greeting, and Oscar, feeling hesitant, reaches out too. Right before him sit 2 Academy invitation letters for him to choose from. Now watch closely, because right before they touch, he senses a massive surge of magic beneath his feet, so he leaps backward to dodge the danger. Amos is amazed by his quick reaction, praising his sharp survival instincts. Old Man floats up to gain a strategic high ground over Oscar, who desperately draws his wand to fight, asking if he is trying to murder him right here. Amos mocks him, asking if he plans to win with that tiny wand, then unleashes a howling gale that traps him completely. The moment Oscar feels the crushing pressure of the barrier, he knows escape is impossible. Instead of panicking or trying to run, he makes a bold, risky move. He fires a blast of flame straight at Balsamus, forcing him to defend and drop the wind barrier. The director is stunned by Oscar's escape route. He dispels the fire, and the exhausted boy falls to his knees. Balsamus steps down, asking if he is out of tricks, warning him he would be dead if this were not a test. Apparently, when kids turn 15, the government sends them invitations for both the Magic Academy and the Swordsman Academy. I know what you are thinking: why attack him? Exhausted, Oscar straight up asks what his real goal is. The director praises his cleverness, explaining that many in the Academy view magic as an exclusive privilege. Simply wanted the boy to experience the harsh reality of the outside world firsthand. However, witnessing his performance, he admits he completely underestimated the true depth of his hidden potential. Oscar finally gets the warning: if he stands out too much from the rest, he will become an easy target, just like what just happened. The director confirms this, revealing there are dangerous extremists who hate talented commoners. This reminds him of the mages who murdered him in his past life. Back then, they told him his incredible talent was a threat they simply could not overlook. Oscar begs the director for their names, but Balsamus sighs heavily, warning that knowing who they are would only put him in greater danger. Once they make a choice, they bring that letter to their chosen academy to enroll. He advises him to focus solely on gaining enough power to protect himself within the academy. Words shake him completely, realizing he would have died if the director actually wanted him dead. He then asks about the pendant around his neck, and the old man reveals it is proof of being a magic saint. This shocks Oscar, as that title represents the absolute highest rank for a mage, equal to a sword saint. He prepares to leave. Amos hands him a unique crest, warning him to guard it well because it will be incredibly useful soon. Leaving, Oscar reflects on the director's overwhelming power, whose flow of mana did not show a single disturbance. But he soon realizes he cannot just stand there in awe. He thought that learning simple magic in this new life would be enough. Finding out a magic saint was connected to his previous death changes everything. Staring at those letters in his old village, it finally sinks in that he really traveled back in time. In the end, it is clear to us that Oscar is ready to surpass even his legendary past as the Sword Saint. Come along with me as we dive into this classroom where everyone is whispering about Oscar, the very first commoner to enter this elite noble class. Zazen cuts in with pure disgust, sneering that this useless commoner is going to get kicked out of the academy any day now. He barely finishes speaking before Oscar himself walks through the door, completely shutting up Zazen and every single hater in the room. Meeting with the principal, Oscar rushes back to his dorm, training like crazy to push his magic circuits to absorb more energy. Hours pass, and he finally feels his mana flow stabilizing, holding on to that power for way longer. Right now, all he wants is a real chance to test his limits in actual combat. Walking through the hall under the heavy gazes of his classmates, Oscar feels a burning desire to become truly undeniably strong. Zazen and Oscar lock eyes, and the sheer disgust on the noble boy's face is impossible to hide. There's no surprise seeing Zazen here, since he expected classroom drama, but then he spots a very familiar figure sitting right in the back, right back to when he was 14, before he ever committed to the path of the sword. It is the sweet Lily. Oscar walks right over and bends down to pick up a bookmark she just dropped. In her signature lovely smile, she takes the bookmark back and thanks him so warmly for helping her out. Glimpsing the illustration on it, Oscar quietly points out how much Lily seems to absolutely adore flowers. Lily catches his words and asks what he said, making him panic and lie about just admiring the flower's beauty. He introduces himself formally and asks to sit beside her, and she happily agrees, introducing herself as Lily Lel. Pay close attention right here, because a mysterious voice suddenly echoes through the room, making everyone jump up in suspense. Suddenly, a magical projection appears at the front, revealing the face of Ruth, the very examiner from the entrance exam. She announces she will be in charge of this entire first-year class. Oscar freezes completely. He never in a million years imagined Ruth would be running his actual class. But then Ruth says exactly what he wanted to hear, revealing that starting next week, suddenly a powerful voice behind him asks what he is doing alone. Oscar spins around and sees his father, Brian, in intense, real combat classes against monsters, taking them out for dangerous field training. Hearing this, Oscar grins from ear to ear because he is finally getting the real battle experience he needs. The teacher warns that to balance the squad power, they must form teams of exactly 5 members. Students start whispering about how they will calculate that power, and Ruth explains it will all be based on the current capacity of their magical circuits. Basically, they will measure the maximum mana their bodies can hold. When someone asks how she will test that live, the teacher smiles and says she is already done. Suddenly, glowing light spheres float above their heads, and Ruth explains the brightness shows their total mana capacity. And honestly, most students have incredibly bright orbs, proving there are some insane high-level geniuses in this class. Looking at Oscar's orb, it glows so weakly compared to literally everyone else. Seeing him confirms once and for all that he actually returned to his youth. The nobles immediately start mocking him, calling him useless trash just because he is a commoner. I know what you are thinking, poor Oscar, right? Not even care that they think he is teamless. Right then, Lily taps his shoulder and invites him to join her squad, catching him completely off guard. Smiles warmly, believing that anyone who appreciates flowers has to have a truly kind soul. He mentions he needs to get approval from their team captain, a guy named Levin Aldrit. Levin is a red-haired noble who looks Oscar up and down before agreeing, saying a noble's duty is protecting the weak, but he makes it crystal clear that his only job will be carrying all their heavy luggage. Soon after, Lily notices the others staring at Oscar like he is some disease and gently tells him to ignore them. She explains that nobles have trained in magic since childhood, so a massive gap like this is totally normal. Oscar assures her he is fine and just thankful to join, prompting her to ask how long he has practiced magic. First, everyone thinks it's a breeze. Then Levin, the arrogant noble in Oscar's group, brags about protecting everyone himself. Brian scolds him, claiming he got arrogant lately and started neglecting his tough daily training sessions. She almost passed out from shock. when Oscar confesses he literally only started learning about 6 months ago. Lily is left breathless and gasping, while Oscar just wonders what on earth is wrong with her and furiously confronts Ruth. When she asks what is wrong, he angrily demands why a commoner is here. He argues that Oscar cannot cast a single decent spell and that his mana levels are absolute garbage, meaning a complete rookie can never keep up with the elites. Ruth just smirks before dropping a massive truth bomb. Watching Zazin shake upon learning Oscar has only trained for 6 months. Stick with me to see how Zazin's eyes completely fly open from the shock. Ruth boasts to Zazin that Oscar has so much potential, in a few months he might be criticizing him. Walks off, reminding him that training is just to weed out rookies, so he has nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, Lily explains the magic ranks to Oscar, spanning apprentice, adept, master, sovereign, and finally magic saint. What his father does not know is that Oscar is far from arrogant. Points out that most nobles are already at a high adept tier from training since childhood. He knows that the adept tier is usually what gets summoned for actual monster subjugation missions. And if we are just talking about mana capacity, he thinks it is amazing that students have reached that rank at their current age. But Lily fires back that he is the real genius, since reaching apprentice in 6 months is unheard of. This makes Oscar doubt if it is his own talent, refusing to accept it while giving his master all the credit. Then Oscar asks Lily about her actual relationship with Levin, and she reveals that Levin's family is a prestigious high noble dynasty, closely followed by all the neighboring families. They seek their protection, and Oscar easily figures out that Lily's family is one of those neighbors. Promises that even if Levin seems arrogant, he will keep his word to protect them when the time comes. Levin is a renowned swordmaster with several disciples training under him. Not want any protection, since his real goal is to gain actual combat experience. The week of field training finally arrives, and all the students gather at the designated meeting point. Ruth shows up alongside an eye patch wearing teacher named Ayan to go over the rules of the training, warns them that they released low-rank monsters, and their only task is to survive one night in the forest. He explains that each team leader received a magic paper equipped with a defensive barrier and an emergency flare spell. They find themselves in serious danger. All they have to do is activate that paper. Hearing this, the students start smiling, fully convinced that this test will be a total piece of cake. Ruth adds that any group requesting help will be immediately demoted from Class 1, and those smiles vanish instantly. Seeing this dramatic shift, Oscar realizes how incredibly important that class status is to these nobles. Bursting with confidence, assures his group that with him leading, nobody will fail because he intends to protect everyone. A high rank sitting just below Sword Saint and Sword Emperor, proving his incredible combat skills. Levin throws this massive pile of luggage for Oscar to carry. Lily tries to argue that it is way too much weight, but Oscar calms her, saying that was the deal. Oscar carries everything with complete humility, and Levin mocks him, saying he likes people who know their place, though he warns him not to get in the way. Not long after, that same boasting Levin is already gasping for air from the long trek they have made. Naturally, he blames the rough terrain, and when Oscar tries to help him up, his massive ego makes him push him away. They push forward, and Oscar figures they haven't seen monsters because the Academy keeps this area under lock and key. Suddenly, Oscar senses a major mana anomaly and shouts for Levin to halt right there. Levin just yells right back, demanding to know who the hell Oscar thinks he is giving orders. Suddenly stomps forward and triggers a space-warping magic circle, identical to the one in Isabel's workshop. Since he was so respected, everyone expected his son to follow in his footsteps, just like before. I know what you're thinking. The space starts cracking and absolute panic sets in. Then stubborn Levin starts crying for his mom, but a calm Oscar tells the group to ready their wands for teleportation. Once the dust settles, Lily realizes they have been transported to an entirely different part of the forest. Looking around in absolute horror, she realizes they are standing right in the 5th cemetery. Others freak out, because that zone is meant for advanced students, wondering how simple rookies like them ended up there. She suspects that this magic circle was a deliberate trap set by someone, thinks it might even be the same group of enemies who murdered him in his past life. Since this is a clear emergency, Oscar suggests activating the magic paper to call for help immediately. Levin claims he is the captain and tears the paper, shocking everyone while arrogantly claiming Oscar is just overreacting. Boasts they just stepped on an old teleportation circle that the Academy simply forgot to clean up. And that's where we leave things, with a father praising a path his son is about to abandon. And trust me, you and I know that Oscar has every reason to doubt him. All right. You and I are about to watch Levin brag about making a massive name for himself. He is absolutely sure that acing this training will bring him top grades and a legendary reputation, confidently takes charge and leads them toward danger. Clueless classmates follow him blindly just because he is the heir of the noble Aldrich family. Oscar literally cannot believe how stupid they are. Lily begs him to stay close so she can protect him. With no choice, he tags along, knowing they might end up as monster food. Soon enough, Oscar senses real danger as a pack of wild beasts suddenly creeps out from the shadows. But instead of panicking, Levin gets hyped. Oscar, though slightly on edge, immediately prepares himself for a fight. Honestly, our guy was practically dying to get some actual real combat experience. A new spell to test, making this the absolute perfect opportunity. Get ready, because you and I are about to watch Oscar completely rewrite his tragic fate. It all started the day he came home, mesmerized by beautiful magic. Too bad Levin cuts him off and demands he step back. Acting all high and mighty, he sneers that he will show him how nobles fight, claiming this battle is no place for commoners. Oscar is just left confused, wondering what on earth this brat even means by fighting like a noble, closely as he plants his wand to trigger a massive earth shield. The spell summons a massive boulder right in front, completely blocking off the vicious beast. Levin uses this moment to buy time and barks orders at his teammates to back him up. One hurls a wind spear while the other conjures a water lance, working together to take down the beast behind Levin's barrier. Meanwhile, Oscar silently watches. He notices Levin handles the defense while the others unleash all their offensive magic. Finally gets what that idiot meant when he bragged about the noble style of fighting. Though to Oscar, this is literally how any ordinary mage fights, not just highborn aristocrats. Suddenly things spiral out of control. One beast slips past, charging straight for Lily. Brian grabbed him tight, spitting that magic was for the weak and demanding he master the sword. In that exact second, the creature dodges Levin, lunging right at her. Luckily, Oscar steps in just in time, slicing the monster in half with his fire sword to save her. Lily thanks him endlessly for the rescue. Right as they notice Levin and the others finally finished off the rest, the other guys collapse onto the ground exhausted, except Levin, who only cast one simple defense spell. Night falls, the group decides to set up camp in the woods. Levin keeps mocking Oscar for being a commoner, saying he was lucky to watch nobles fight. Oscar just plays along, even praising their teamwork. Doing this, Levin deflates a bit, clearly disappointed by Oscar's utterly bored reaction to his supposed greatness. Both know Oscar does not want basic combined magic. He wants to be a one-man destructive force, wielding magic powerful enough to totally crush the mages who ended his past life. Power that can bring the kingdom's absolute strongest mages to their knees, including the headmaster himself. Oscar trained relentlessly just so his father wouldn't abandon him, even though deep down his ultimate dream was always to learn magic, and he is genuinely worried his current training speed is way too slow to reach that level. A bit later, Lily interrupts his thoughts by offering some coffee, wanting to thank him for saving her when she was supposed to protect him, not to sweat it, and asks about the magic they used during the battle. Wants to understand why some of their spells were devastating while others had zero power. Levin overhears and butts in, explaining that magic is stronger closer to the caster. But Lily snaps at him because nobody asked him. Stomps off annoyed, but not before throwing another arrogant, classist insult at our main character. Lily then seriously explains the theory: when a spell moves away from the caster, it loses strength and dissolves into nature as mana. Oscar finally understands why magic fades into the air, and his mind immediately begins working out a brand new theory. Knowing magic formulas only activate when you inject them with the exact amount of mana, Oscar wonders if he can boost the spell's effectiveness. In the end, then, Lily complains that her coffee is way too strong, and looking at her cup, Oscar gets a brilliant idea. Even though she tries talking to him, He is already completely absorbed in his new theory to concentrate spell power. Realizes his new theory is basically identical to channeling sword ki. In the forest, Professor Ayan is watching them through a magic circle. Turns out he set up this entire threat, and he is actually shocked Levin managed to handle it. With Levin being a total pain, Ayan decides to make things worse, and we definitely can't miss what happens next. Come along with me to the main camp, where Professor Ruth watches the students overnight. Students huddle up, trembling as Ruth stands guard. Watching them all day, she is shocked that almost nobody quit. Completely proves her theory that this year's rookies have insane talent. Soon Isabel arrives to take over her shift, and Ruth is incredibly relieved to finally get some rest. But the moment they step into the woods, our main character senses something is horribly wrong. Died at a mage's hands, and that's why he's forging his own path now. And confronts him again, furious over his lack of practice. Meanwhile, the students begin whispering the moment they spot the famous Isabel. Checks on the other groups using a magic circle and gets quite surprised. As usual, Isabel hates babysitting useless people. The first class is performing way better than she ever expected, especially Zazan, who breezes through the training without sweating. There is also a silver-haired girl who will not look up from her book. Isabel suddenly realizes that Oscar and his entire group have completely vanished. Ruth explains the transmission signal is glitching and she has no updates, just asking Professor Ayan to get more details. When she scans the area, Ruth cannot see Ayan anywhere in sight. Meanwhile, at the 5th cemetery, Levin's group rests while one person keeps watch. Oscar is still deeply lost in his complex magic theories. He is trying to figure out how to channel mana to strengthen his body, just like swordsmen use their energy. Basically, they circulate, condense, and elevate that power right inside their bodies. And Oscar simply replies that he already dedicated an entire lifetime to the sword. Pay attention here, because before Oscar finishes his theory, an absolute disaster strikes, screaming at everyone to run. Levin does not take them seriously. Thinking they are running from weak beasts, he prepares to fight with style. Then a massive fire blast rains down, leaving them in absolute shock. Levin freezes up in pure terror while Lily realizes this is a literal vortex of flames. After a heavy, tense silence, a gigantic dragon slowly emerges from the thick woods. In that exact moment, Levin and his teammates realize the horrible mistake they made by coming to this place. They cannot understand what a dragon is doing in a rookie exam. Being a beast like this is a job only for holy level mages. He finally figures out that someone has targeted them on purpose. One teammate begs Levin to use the distress magic paper, but he reveals he tore it up, leaving them completely defenseless. Suggests fighting the dragon head-on right now. Lily is totally stunned, unable to believe such absolute madness. Hearing this, Brian's rage explodes, unleashing a massive aura surrounded by swords of pure light. I know what you are thinking, but Oscar knows this is their only shot at survival. Hearing this, the others calm down, placing all their trust in the unbeatable noble Levin. They hope to hold out with defense magic until the teachers rescue them. In awkward silence, Levin slams his wand into the ground. He conjures a spiritual earth shield, creating a protective cocoon just for himself. This leaves everyone completely speechless, especially his teammates who were relying on his protection. Levin calls them fools and explains his shield cannot stop a dragon. Bluntly warns them he only plans to save himself. Right then, the students who expected his protection fall into a state of total panic. Lily chooses to trust Oscar and orders everyone to fight. In charge, she hurls sharp earth spikes right at the beast. He celebrates, believing Lily's massive attack actually finished it off, but the dragon emerges completely untouched. They realize they will need high-tier spells to even scratch it. His crushing pressure instantly forces everyone around him straight to their knees. Refusing to give up, Lily decides to act as bait, telling Oscar to run for help immediately. However, Oscar completely ignores her as he coldly plans his next move. Meanwhile, one boy casts spells while shaking uncontrollably. The other gives up entirely, just waiting for death to arrive. Just as the dragon prepares another fire vortex in its jaws, Oscar steps forward. Lily watches him, highly curious about his plan. He notices the beast absorbs mana from the air to fuel its fire. Despite the terrifying sight, he is calm, eager to test his power against a dragon. Historically, these beasts have meant total disaster. They absorb endless mana from the area to fuel their deadly breath. But this gives Oscar a brilliant idea. He wonders what would happen if he could condense and refine that natural supernatural energy for himself. The monster unleashes its flames, the group prepares for the end. They don't even flinch at this insane display. Grounded guards can't comprehend how he stays so calm, while that aura literally crushes them. While Levin cowers in his cocoon and Lily fears for Oscar, he stays calm. And I will never forget how he faces this danger. Alright, you and I are about to watch Oscar face absolute dragon fire with a crazy fire bullet spell. Luckily, his magic scatters the flames and strikes the beast right in the head, ending its reign of terror. This leaves Lily speechless, dropping to her knees while staring at Oscar in utter disbelief. Elsewhere, Ayan watches through his magic mirror. Cannot believe Oscar, a mere rookie, took down the dragon in one shot. Before finding the source of Oscar's power, Ayan senses that someone might already be tracking his own steps. So he decides to retreat, but not before swearing to destroy Oscar the very next time they meet. Only nobles should wield such overwhelming force, while Oscar is nothing but a weak, low-class commoner. Meanwhile, Oscar celebrates his successful magic theory. He applied sword refinement principles to mana, and it worked flawlessly, perfectly. He knows this wild idea was only possible because of his past life as a legendary skilled swordsman. Seeing his unbelievable composure, moments later the group approaches the massive dragon carcass to make absolutely sure the beast is dead. Still cannot believe they survived. Levan, stepping out of his protective earth cocoon, is shocked that a commoner defeated the beast, hates accepting that a high-ranking noble like him had to be saved by a commoner. Lily is frozen too, trying to process the unbelievable feat she just witnessed with her own eyes. Suddenly, Oscar stumbles and falls. Lily runs to him in a panic, but he gently reassures her that he is just exhausted from overusing his power. That final blast was way too destructive, draining all his mana. Felt like his body was burning up, ready to burst. Now pay close attention, because danger is creeping up on them as a weird noise echoes through the dark trees. Lily dreads facing another deadly monster, but to her immense relief, it is only Isabel and her massive golem. Apparently, she discovered traces of a teleportation magic circle and decided to follow the trail. Isabel immediately asks if they are safe, but everyone is too stunned to speak. Oscar barely mutters a word before blacking out. Brian takes a step back, admitting that his son hasn't been slacking off after all. They all rush to help him while Isabel spots the dead dragon. She knows her star student did something crazy again. Promises herself to interrogate the young students thoroughly the moment they finally return to the safety of the academy. While the others worry about Oscar, Levin shivers, dreading the massive humiliation waiting for him back home. Sunset, the group heads back. Once recovered, Oscar meets with Principal Balsamus to report everything that happened on their journey. Balsamus cannot believe Oscar faced a deadly assassination attempt right on campus grounds. Realizes dark mages have infiltrated the academy, specifically aiming to hunt down commoner students, and praises Oscar for surviving. The boy explains he only made it because he chose to become much stronger. With excitement, he reveals to Balsamus that he finally understands the first step to reaching the next power level. I know you and I are thinking the same thing, but the principal warns him to leave the academy immediately. He advises him to live a quiet life far away, completely avoiding magic. He insists it is his only hope to survive. Pay close attention to this moment. Him on the shoulder, saying he'll gladly pass down the guild if Oscar keeps this up. Hearing this, Oscar remembers his past life and how empty and miserable he felt despite all his great achievements. Amos reminds him that plenty of people live happy lives without ever needing any magical abilities. He assures him he can find joy away from this conflict, begging him not to waste his youth this way. Listening to the advice, Oscar remembers how genuinely happy he has been training magic alongside Isabel in this new life. He refuses to lose that joy and firmly rejects the offer. He will not give up after fighting so hard to get here. The principal is shocked. Since the boy will not back down, Oscar simply thanks the old man for his care. Since the enemy targeting him is hiding inside the academy, Oscar reveals he has a clever plan to force them out. This sparks Balsamus' curiosity, and he asks for details. Then Oscar boldly declares he will act as live bait to drag those cowards out of the shadows. Balsamus is stunned by his reckless madness and seriously asks if he is not afraid of dying. With that, he leaves, and the three punks with him immediately step up to hassle Oscar. Confidently, Oscar guarantees he does not plan on dying anytime soon. His response makes the principal burst into loud laughter, wondering what was so funny about his words to make the old man laugh. In his confusion, Balsamus quickly apologizes. Seeing the young boy is determined to fight, he chooses to give him full support. With that, they shake hands, formally sealing their unexpected and incredibly powerful new alliance. Next, Balsamus suggests getting a new wand. Oscar is confused, but checking his own, he sees it is totally destroyed. In the end, he gets a basic temporary wand from Isabel, and trust me, you and I need to see what happens next. Let's find out together if a mage actually needs a wand to fight. Isabel explains that writing with just your fingers is incredibly difficult. To show him, she dips her finger in ink, explaining the wand writes while mana is the ink itself. Basically, you can draw spells without tools, but they will turn out way too shaky. They claim they couldn't wait to return from the academy just to duel him. One's already volunteering to teach him a lesson with the blade. Isabel insists that flawless magic requires investing in top-tier gear. Meeting, Oscar heads out to buy a new one. While waiting at the academy gates, he stares at his old wand, shocked it broke after just one battle. Wonders if the tool simply could not handle the massive mana he unleashed against the dragon. He even sought out his thoughts. Lily's sweet voice cuts in. He immediately apologizes for being late, while Oscar feels bad for dragging her out on her day off, but Lily insists she does not mind. Wearing bright smiles, the two of them set off to find Oscar's brand new wand. Pay close attention here when they hit the shop. Oscar is stunned by the massive collection the merchant proudly displays. Next, the vendor pulls out one of his precious pieces, heavily decorated with sparkling rare gems, promises this design will win him everyone's respect. Oscar just wonders if those flashy gems actually boost his spells, but Lily quickly leans in and whispers that he should probably check the price tag first. Before they can even react, a strange magic circle glows beneath their feet and teleports the entire squad away. Oscar remembers these three were the exact sparring partners his father always forced him to train with. Oscar's jaw completely drops when he sees the insane price. Lily suggests looking somewhere else since it is way over his budget. Unfortunately, the next shop they try is even more expensive, forcing them to run away empty-handed. After fleeing from several other high-end stores, Oscar and Lily finally decide to give up. After walking around all day, Oscar realizes these items are ridiculously pricey and he cannot afford anything decent. Lily explains they cost a fortune because most mages are snobby nobles obsessed with looking elite and sophisticated, for wasting her day, and suggests he should probably continue the search on his own. I know what you are thinking, she is absolute gold. Lily refuses to leave his side, leading them to a very creepy shop. Suddenly, another merchant on the street warns them not to go inside that place. When asked why, the man says the owner is crazy and forces customers to buy unwanted things. Oscar stares at the building for a second and, ignoring the clear warning, decides to go inside anyway. Once they entered the academy and awakened their sword energy, Lily tries to stop him, warning they might get trapped unless they buy something. But Oscar completely ignores her and cheerfully opens the door. Points out that since the place looks totally bankrupt, it must actually be pretty trustworthy. Stepping inside, they are met with a dark, gloomy atmosphere that instantly gives Lily goosebumps. They spot a craftsman named Rod Carving Wood, who asks without looking up if they are just browsing or buying. Oscar replies he needs a wand. Rod drops his tools, asking in an annoyed tone why they chose his dump when there are plenty of decent shops outside. Spins around, glaring furiously, holding his carving knife, but despite the obvious threat, Oscar remains completely calm. Rod snaps and hurls the knife straight at Oscar, yelling at him for mocking his business. Oscar dodges the blade with effortless skill, leaving Lily absolutely speechless from the sudden shock. Oscar explains he is not here to play games, but this only enrages the craftsman, who snaps that he does not sell to swordsmen. Oscar is genuinely surprised by this, while Lily, convinced the old man is dangerous, tries to drag him out. They began thrashing Oscar to vent their old frustrations. Now they plan on doing the exact same thing, but to her utter shock, Oscar excitedly declares he is staying because this old man seems incredibly interesting. Lily cannot believe he wants to buy from this place. And Rod, who was acting tough, is left speechless by Oscar's attitude. Oscar asks him directly why he thinks he is a swordsman. Rod scans him from head to toe. Then he explains he noticed a slight lean to the right, showing he usually carries something heavy on his left side. Rod insists that is a dead giveaway of someone who regularly carries a sword. Oscar is highly impressed by the sheer accuracy of Rod's sharp observation. Lily protests that he is no swordsman, but Oscar holds up a hand to stop her. Finds it amazing how Rod figured it out instantly. Brief silence, Oscar confesses to Rod that he only recently started studying magic. Rod is shocked to hear he has only been practicing for 6 months. Oscar explains his stance comes from the brutal sword training forced on him by his father. The muscle memory of those old habits is still deeply engraved in him. Oscar grabs a wooden sword, and the hyped-up guy dares him to take his stance. Lily backs him up, swearing he really is a mage. When asked why he needs a new wand, Oscar admits his old one shattered. And trust me, you and I are going to want to see what happens next. Alright, you and I are about to watch Rod examine Oscar's broken wand, only to confirm it is completely useless. Looking closely, he explains that the magic circle inside of it ended up completely shattered. This happened because way too much mana was forced inside. Since Oscar looks confused, Rod explains it in detail. Says larger wands hold more power, but their massive size makes them extremely hard to handle. Those giant models also require incredibly precise mana control, making things even more complicated. Rod adds that a small, simple wand is perfect for beginners, since the compact size makes it easy to control. It reminds him that the Magic Academy professors use highly complex models due to their advanced skills. In this, Oscar is shocked that a basic wand couldn't even handle his new magic theory, so he asks Rod to recommend a good one, but the old man says he hasn't decided to sell him anything yet. Basically, having sword energy creates an absolutely massive, unbeatable gap. They know it, but Oscar completely freezes them by simply turning his back. Oscar and Lily freeze at his words, since they thought they had actually made a great first impression. Rod points to his display case, telling Oscar to pick the best one to prove his worth. Now pay close attention here. Oscar begins browsing the counter as Lily holds her breath. Anxiety spikes because she knows a wand's true worth is defined by its size and material. Basically, those made of rare materials cost a fortune because of their incredible mana affinity. Just then, a model on the top shelf catches his eye, made from a rare precious wood called hagonamy. Lily knows for a fact that the price of that wand could fund a luxurious life for an entire year. She quietly prays that Oscar notices the valuable wood, but her silent prayers are completely ignored. Unsurprisingly, Oscar does something crazy and locks his eyes on the most worthless-looking wand in the shop. Grabs it, waving it around like he just hit the jackpot, proudly announcing he will take this one. Walks over to the lake, thanking his blade for all their shared time. Lily is speechless, and Rod is completely shocked. She quickly points to the expensive model, begging him to reconsider, but Oscar tells her he was asked to choose a good wand, not the most expensive one. Confused, wondering what he means. Meanwhile, Rod asks him why he chose that specific one. Oscar says it gave him a warm feeling. Rod argues it is worn and old, but Oscar praises its durability. Think about it, the absolute worst thing that can happen in battle is your weapon snapping mid-fight. Despite the rough exterior, the weapon's actual functionality remains completely intact. He adds that the wand's design seems to have been crafted with the user's real needs in mind. Rod is deeply impressed by his words and silently walks away and buy it, but the old man refuses. With a nostalgic tone, he explains that he crafted it for his own son a long time ago. The revelation shocks them both, and Lily wonders why he even displays it if he has no plans to sell. Then, without hesitation, he throws it straight into the water. As it sinks, they laugh, assuming he's just running away like a coward. Rod confesses the owner broke before the wand did, though he avoids giving any tragic details about his son. Simply tells Oscar that the wand is far too old to be considered a viable option anymore. Lily decides it is time to leave, promising to help Oscar find another quality shop. Oscar feels slightly disappointed by the failed deal, as he had found their conversation genuinely interesting. Just as they turn around to leave the shop, Rod suddenly calls out, stopping them in their tracks. He tells Oscar to wait while he retrieves a suitable model, realizing their efforts finally paid off. Once the old man leaves to find it, Lily finally sighs in relief. Oscar apologizes for causing trouble and asks if she is curious about the kind of wand Rod will bring. Unfortunately, she is still trying to calm her racing nerves and cannot share his enthusiasm for this adventure. Even so, she notices that Oscar is having a blast with this whole situation. The challenger charges forward in a total rage, screaming that he's an absolute disgrace to all swordsmen. Suddenly, Ayan walks in and freezes in shock. When he demands to know what they are doing there. An incredibly tense silence fills the room as Ain grips his whip, looking completely ready for a fight. Oscar stares back without blinking, while a totally clueless Lily cheerfully asks if he came to buy a wand. Ain stammers an excuse just as Rod returns from the back, greeting him warmly. Ain quickly greets Rod before Bolt running out the door like a madman, promising to return when there are no clients. And that is where we leave it, with Lily chasing Ain as he flees at full speed. What do you think happens next? Come with me on this. While Lily fears they interrupted the professor, Oscar stays completely calm and quiet. Seconds later, Rod wipes down the magic wand and hands it over to Oscar as his new partner. Oscar's eyes light up with excitement as he examines this wand that doesn't actually look that impressive. Lily notices the wand was carved from the mystical tree of origin, a massive sacred tree from a certain island nation. Oscar spins back around with a calm smile. It thrives in any climate, and no matter how harsh the environment gets, its trunk never rots, its leaves always glow, and the branches naturally renew themselves every few decades. Lily is shocked to see a wand made from this wood since it is the ultimate material, a legendary treasure. Rod is surprised by Lily's deep knowledge, explaining that this weapon can handle an absolutely brutal amount of mana. Of all the wand's incredible perks, this specific detail is the only one that catches Oscar's interest. Before celebrating, Lily reminds him they ran from other shops because their budget was a complete joke. Here is where it gets good. Remembering his empty pockets, Oscar's excitement vanishes, but Rod decides to gift it. It means that he carved it by hand as a gift for his late son. He wanted to give it to him after the war, but the boy died. Oscar holds the wand like fragile glass. Back to his workbench, Rod firmly insists that he refuses to accept even a single cent for it, making it clear he'll never wield a weapon again because he's chosen to become a mage. Stand in silence, the old man repeats that he has no intention of selling Oscar any other wand. No other wand in the shop will fit him. Convinced, Oscar grips his new weapon and thanks him. Rod brushes off the gratitude and immediately tells him to test out its power, closes his eyes and begins channeling his mana under the old man's watchful gaze. Right at that moment, a strange, warm sensation rushes through Oscar as his energy begins to flow. Even though it is his very first time touching it, he feels like he has used it for years. The moment he finishes, Rod yells at them to get out, complaining he needs to open for paying customers. Before leaving, Oscar dares to ask about Ayan, wanting to know if he visits the shop often. Days later, classmates whisper nonstop as they pass by, gossiping about what went down at the graveyard. The entire ordeal was just an accident caused by a faulty teleportation circle. When they open their eyes, they are far from the safe zone, stuck in the dangerous fifth cemetery meant for seniors. And so, his rival doesn't care, warning Oscar he won't show mercy just because he's unarmed. Everyone is shocked the group made it back alive, and rumors swirl about how Levin fled like a complete coward, mocking his fear mercilessly. Pay close attention here. A whip silences the entire room as Ayan finally makes his entrance. The teacher harshly scolds them for ignoring his presence and whispering right in the middle of class. Students apologize in unison, yet Oscar simply watches the professor with complete quiet composure. Rod had revealed that Ayan was his son's squad captain, who was apparently on the battlefield when the young man died, and was the one who delivered the tragic news. After the boy's death, Ayan returned the old wand back to Rod as a final keepsake. Lily was touched by the story. Rod even praised Ayan for being a great guy who treated his commoner son well despite being a noble. Oscar's eyes went wide when he heard this, and he mentioned that Rod's son must have been an incredible mage, superior to nobles, since the wand looked so worn. Rod was stunned by the comment, wondering how Oscar figured out his son was such an exceptional mage. Swings with everything he's got, but Oscar reads every single movement perfectly. Thanks to Rod's story, Oscar had finally found the exact answer he had been searching for. Remembering that Ayan was in charge of the field training makes him the absolute prime suspect. Thinking it through, Oscar concludes that Ayan is definitely the mastermind behind the attempt on his life. Staying calm and seeing that Ayan still suspects nothing, Oscar decides to take his chance and strike first. Later on, Aang contacts his secret organization. A sinister voice congratulates him for successfully completing his wartime mission. They praise him for his outstanding performance and for exceeding all expectations. The mysterious voice also demands that he achieve the exact same lethal result at the Magic Academy. Aang nods nervously. Sensing his hesitation, the voice asks if infiltrating the academy is harder than the war. He immediately denies it, but the voice coldly warns him that they need to see results very soon. Once the call ends, Aang stands frozen, completely consumed by worry. I know what you're thinking, he's using sword energy to boost his body, but Oscar easily dodges it to teach him a real lesson. And with that, guys, Principal Balsamus is left utterly shocked to find out Aang planned it all. What comes next? Stick with me here because it is hard to believe a life-risking hero like Aang is the traitor. Oscar tells Balsamsus he knows all about Aang's heroic deeds, but he is still absolutely sure he is guilty. Seeing Oscar's fierce determination, Balsamus decides to trust him but warns him that they cannot act without solid, undeniable proof. Oscar calmly declares that he will become that very proof himself. Balsamus is stunned, but Oscar explains he will use his own life as bait to make Aang attack just like during training. He wants to set up a situation with very few witnesses to tempt Aang. Oscar knows the traitor won't pass up such a perfect chance to strike. Balsamus thinks it over for a moment. His eyes drift down to a document lying on his desk. That paper details an escort mission for the Imperial Princess, which is the perfect setup for the trap Oscar just suggested. Apparently, Princess Ariel of the Empire was supposed to enter Class 1 directly. He advises him to treat the blade as an extension of his own body, not some simple tool. However, her admission got delayed due to a rebound caused by the hereditary magic passed down through the royal family. During the lesson, Ruth explains Ariel's situation and announces an official mission to bring her back to the academy. Basically, they are sending an elite group to the imperial capital to escort her back. Ruth gathers the most outstanding students from Class 1 for this task, including Oscar, Zazen, and that quiet girl who reads all day. Now pay attention because Oscar knows this mission is the ultimate bait to lure Aang out. After explaining the details, Ruth asks if there are any questions, and Zazen immediately raises his hand. True to form, the noble decides to pick on his favorite commoner, Oscar. Since everyone there has exceptional talent, Zazen questions whether Oscar's power is actually up to standard. To his complete shock, Ruth confirms it, even adding that Oscar outperformed the entire group during field training. Aang is totally confused and furious to hear this, while the bookworm girl doesn't even blink. This only infuriates his opponent more. Despite Ruth's official word, Zazen refuses to accept it, arrogantly claiming that Oscar is barely a manor apprentice who cannot even cast basic spells. Oscar stays completely calm while the other guy tries to humiliate him. Jealous child. Zazen complains about everyone praising Oscar despite his mediocre talent. He saw Isabel and the principal praise Oscar, and now Ruth is doing the same. He can't stand a commoner outperforming them in field training. Consumed by pure frustration, Zazen challenges him to a duel. You and I know what is coming next, right? He wants to see that hyped up power. Oscar is baffled by the challenge since he just wanted to mind his own business, while Ruth gets frustrated seeing the mission endangered by these spoiled nobles. This from ruining their team spirit. Ruth approves the duel and announces the loser will be kicked off the prestigious escort mission. Without hesitation, Zazen accepts the challenge, while Oscar stands in the back, looking like a total background character. Screaming at him to stop preaching, he attacks like crazy. But Oscar dodges everything without even raising a hand, or even realizing what is happening. Oscar ends up in the middle of the combat arena for a duel he never wanted. Staring down at his staff, Oscar wonders how on earth things managed to escalate to this point. Since his own existence, Zazen eagerly prepares to prove his noble superiority, raising his wand to summon massive ice icicles right above Oscar. He yells at Oscar to prepare to face his full fury. In time, Oscar decides to take the fight seriously, knowing he has much bigger problems to deal with. Besides, losing is not an option if he wants to use this mission to trap Aang. Gathering his thoughts, Oscar finally accepts Zazen's challenge. Despite being praised by everyone as the absolute prodigy of the great House Galois, Zazen carries a hidden inferiority complex. living as an obsessive perfectionist who is never satisfied with his own achievements. Even with endless praise, nothing soothes his frustration. Despite the Galois being known as the most powerful lineage in ice magic, compared to his absolutely perfect brother, Zazen feels completely insignificant. Oscar realizes he's already lecturing this kid like he was a disciple from his past life. Lacking natural magic talent since childhood, he worked twice as hard as everyone else. He desperately wanted to meet his family's high expectations and eventually catch up to his brother. Above all, he challenged Oscar to prove he is a mage worthy of the Galois name. Instantly, Zazen fires his powerful ice spears, but Oscar cleanly dodges them. Acknowledging those quick reflexes, Zazen decides to step it up. He casts an absolute freezing spell to trap Oscar, leaving him completely pinned to the ground. His hand freezes, but Oscar casts a quick fire spell to break free. This battle is only just beginning. Let's dive into this craziness. Zazen completely freezes up, seeing Oscar undo his magic in seconds. Both of them are locked in a tense stare down, waiting for the next move. Meanwhile, Ruth watches the duel from afar, while our quiet bookworm totally ignores this ridiculous display of male ego. Battle rages. Ruth is shocked seeing Oscar melt the ice by cloaking himself in fire. He immediately notices he moves like a highly experienced warrior. Pure frustration consumes the boy, who begins screaming in desperation as he fails to land a single hit. Even so, she suspects Zazen still has more raw power left in reserve than Oscar. Because of that, she believes it is only a matter of time before Zazen's brutal force crushes him. Predicted, Oscar ends up cornered by ice spears. Thinking victory is already his, Zazen arrogantly praises his talent for a mere commoner, claims that talent is nothing compared to his own years of hard training. Next, Zazen summons another devastating ice spear to finish Oscar off and prove who is boss. Suddenly, something unbelievable happens, making even the quiet bookworm look up. Ruth watches in total shock as Oscar stands up, wrapped in a thick aura of pure power. Oscar coldly apologizes for keeping everyone waiting, acting as if he was just warming up, since he was just taking his time preparing, leaving Zazen completely baffled. Now, pay close attention here, because Oscar warns him he is about to strike, but Zazen mocks him, saying it is too late for cheap tricks. Oscar decides to end his misery, sending him crashing onto his back. With a simple tap to the forehead, he launches his ultimate move, a solid ice prison to trap him. This catches Oscar off guard because he could not even see the strike coming. Oscar realizes that trap was hidden within the previous barrage of ice spears, but he does not flinch. His energy is fully refined, and that freezing prison suddenly feels like mere child's play to him. He is confident his new wand will withstand the same spell that brought down the dragon during practice. Zazen tries to lock him in the ice. Oscar unleashes his flaming sword, shattering the prison in a single slash. Zazen cannot believe his ultimate trump card just failed so miserably. Ruth is completely stunned, and the silent bookworm is now watching the match with intense interest, thrilled that his magic flows exactly as planned. His body feels light, and spells manifest instantly without any delay. Oscar finds this incredibly exciting. For Zazen, it is a total nightmare seeing his shield destroyed. Unable to accept that a commoner shattered his defense so easily, Oscar knocks him clean out with a precise blow. The guy is left so weak his friends have to carry him away. Just about to curse, he sees Oscar closing the distance, seeing him advance so ruthlessly. Zazen cannot help but remember his older brother. In the past, his only dream was to become as strong as him, but his brother always told him he was overestimating him. He never saw himself as special, claiming there were people out there who could make him look insignificant in a second. I know what you are thinking, and yes, looking at Oscar, Zazen finally understands his brother's words as the gap closes. And just as he raises his wand to strike back, Ruth steps in, demanding an end to the duel. Declaring that the winner is obvious, she stops the fight while Zazen quietly surrenders, staring at the weapon aimed right at his chest. Elsewhere, Levin throws a massive tantrum, questioning his very existence. Rumors about his cowardice spread throughout the academy, and everyone is talking trash behind his back. The looks of contempt, he blames Oscar directly for his humiliation. Suddenly, someone knocks on his door and he flings it open, screaming with pure rage. Oscar immediately spots the trap and orders them to use the emergency talisman. but Levin, being a total idiot, rips it up just to show off. Once they leave, Oscar stands staring at the enemy sword driven deep into the ground. His anger quickly fades when he realizes it is Professor Ayan who has come to see him. The next day, when Zazan walks into the classroom, his eyes lock onto Oscar in a long, tense silence. After the fight, Zazan admitted his jealousy, finding it hard to accept that years of effort were crushed by Oscar's raw talent. And even though Oscar tried to help him up, Zazan proudly rejected the gesture. He firmly promised he would surpass him, no matter how many years it took. Oscar accepted the challenge, but he plans to keep growing until his power is completely out of reach for anyone. With his spot as a guard secured, Oscar is already preparing to face Ayan tomorrow. Later in class, Ruth announces a new energy test and walks into the room, totally calm, with his right arm heavily bandaged. Ruth calls him out for being late, but he blatantly ignores her. He walks straight to his seat, completely unfazed by his classmates' mocking whispers, bitterly remembering how his father brutally forced him to awaken his sword energy in his previous life. And that is where we leave it, with Oscar sensing danger as Levin ignores him with that bandaged arm. What do you think happens next? Let's dive in as Ruth demands absolute silence in the classroom so they can finally start the mana measurement. Once finished, Lily congratulates Oscar on boosting his mana capacity in such a ridiculously short amount of time. Oscar credits his new wand, which already feels perfect. Lily wonders if she should buy one just like it from Rod's shop. Suddenly, Lean stops him, catching the attention of several students who immediately start whispering and mocking them. Instead of fighting, Levin directly begs Oscar to teach him how to get way stronger. Confused, Oscar asks what he means. Annoyed, Levin demands he stop playing dumb since he knows his big secret. It immediately rattles Oscar, who starts panicking over what on earth Levin could actually know about him. Shortly after, Oscar decides to follow Lean out to the training grounds, surprised that Levin actually reserved the entire place just for this tense late-night confrontation. He knows he must master magic quickly to stop history from repeating itself. With this in mind, he heads into the woods where nobody can watch. Demanding answers, Oscar asks what secret he is talking about, but Levin accuses him of playing games. Levin then claims the power used to defeat the dragon was given to him by someone else. Hearing this, Oscar is totally baffled by this nonsense. This makes Levin even angrier, thinking Oscar is just mocking his superior noble intelligence. He screaming in pure rage, complaining that everyone always treats him like a fool. Suddenly, Levin's bandages rip apart as his hand swells up, revealing a monstrous arm covered in sharp thorns. Now pay attention here, because Oscar completely freezes as Levin's arm mutates into something absolutely terrifying. Then Levin looks confused by his own transformation, as if he skipped the terms and conditions of this power, rushes over to check on him. But Levin has absolutely no clue what is happening. He was probably promised some epic power-up, so Levin starts whining that this is not what he wanted. Unfortunately, his cheap knockoff arm just keeps on mutating, causing him some absolutely agonizing and unbearable pain, sitting down on a large boulder. He recalls the day he asked a mage named Lily how to actually use magic. Right then, several stone spikes erupt from the ground, nearly skewering Oscar like a kebab. Fortunately, he quickly dodges the spikes while keeping an eye on Levin. He notices he moves like a puppet. Remembering his words about receiving mysterious power, Oscar finally pieces together who the mastermind behind this could be. Meanwhile, Levin keeps crying over his miserable life, refusing to accept that he completely ruined their field training. He genuinely does not believe he did anything wrong by just trying to survive on his own. Finally showing remorse for what he did to his team, Levin confesses he truly just wanted to protect them. Only he had the power. Look at this, Oscar exploits his distraction to attack, easily dodging a strike from that hideous arm. Before Levin can swing again, knocks him out from behind and gently lays him down. He then screams furiously at Ayan for using an innocent kid as a pawn in his stupid game. Knowing Ayan must be watching closely, Oscar demands he stop hiding and show his face once and for all. He knew warriors gather internal energy to get stronger, but he always wondered how wizards conjured their spells. As a flock of crows begins circling above, Ayan appears. Whip in hand, he sneers at Oscar, calling him an insolent commoner. Floating majestically in the air surrounded by crows, Ayan looks as if he is suspended over a tear in the sky, then starts outlining the lie he will feed the academy after he gets rid of Oscar for good. They were training together when someone lost control, causing a tragic accident that claimed both of their lives. Ignoring his boring speech, Oscar immediately strikes with fire magic, but Ayan casually dispels it with shocking ease. Annoyed by those weak flames, Ayan vows he will make Oscar kneel right before him, then summons several wolf familiars to attack. Himself, Oscar recalls his last chat with the headmaster. Seamus had clearly warned him that Ayan possesses incredibly powerful magic to control these familiars, dominates them by carving magical formulas onto monster corpses, manipulating them like simple puppets. Unfortunately for him, he can only control a limited number of these beasts. Lily paused for a moment to think. Most revealed the only winning strategy is to completely ignore Ayan and focus on destroying his summons first. Who advised him to stay highly alert, since a magic saint like Ayan has plenty of other tricks up his sleeve. Even though Balsamus strictly forbade him from fighting Ayan alone, Oscar had no choice. His plan was to strategize with the headmaster during the escort mission. He never expected Ayan to make his move and attack this early. Now that an innocent student is in danger, Oscar has absolutely no intention of backing down. With Levan's painful screams echoing in his mind, "Trust me, you and I are just getting started. Get ready, because you and I are about to watch Oscar unleash absolute hellfire against those wolves." Seeing his face, Ayan immediately notices Oscar's fury and asks if he is fighting this hard just for Levan. Oscar admits his anger over Levan, but Ayan just sneers and laughs right in his face. It reminds him they are barely friends, having only teamed up once during their field training. To find the best way to explain it. Grabbing a watering can, she watered her flowers, showing him that using magic is like feeding plants. It is enough to feel responsible, but Ayan claims the kid does not feel the same. He reveals Levan only chased after greater power to get revenge on Oscar. According to Ayan, Levan views him as an enemy and a simple commoner. Yet Oscar does not flinch at all, leaving Ayan completely baffled. He only replies that he does not care how Levan looks at him. Daring to strike, Oscar says Levan made his own choices out of a desperate desire to become stronger. Fierce determination, he declares he will never forgive Ayan for exploiting Levan's vulnerability. But as he goes to unleash his fire, his magic formula suddenly shatters, leaving him completely stunned. Pay attention here, he quickly realizes he cannot construct any magic formulas. Stomping the ground, Ayan declares his organization will never tolerate a commoner with this much talent. He reveals he prepared everything perfectly, knowing Oscar has an exceptionally high talent for magic, that mana is completely invisible to the human eye, but it exists naturally and fills the entire atmosphere. As Oscar's magic continues to fail, Ian summons his giant elephant familiar. Analyzing the situation, Oscar realizes that Ayan's familiars are constantly draining his mana, actively disrupting all his spellcasting. Even in this tight spot, Oscar remains calm, warning Ayan that he did not come unprepared. Ayan thinks he has already won as he summons even more of his savage wolf familiars. Though the field blocks Ayan from casting new spells too, he feels victory is already his. He proudly reveals the runes carved onto his beasts stay active even without casting new spells. With that, he decides to finish Oscar off, completely surrounding him with his lethal monsters. Despite the terrible odds, Oscar remains incredibly posed in the face of this bleak situation. Yet this makes him understand why so many talented mages fell so easily to Ayan. Not just raw strength, but pure fear and despair that broke them. Remembering the wand of Rod's son, he instinctively touches his chest. By channeling that mana through your own circuits and pouring it into a spell formula, a true spell is born. He can only imagine how painful it was for that child to lose his magic, defenseless and surrounded by monsters. Filled with absolute resolve, Oscar readies himself to fight, prepared to teach Ayan a lesson for messing with the wrong person. Meanwhile, you and I head back to the director's office, where Ruth brings in several documents to review. Ruth asks if this is all for the mission, and Balsamus replies they must protect the princess at all costs. Looking over the files, he notices student applications to use the training grounds are even higher this year than before. Ruth mentions this is admirable, showing just how dedicated their academy students really are. Drops a key detail: Levan started private lessons with Ayan. Hearing this, something clicks in Balsamus's mind. In the fight, Oscar realizes that while that annoying familiar remains active, Casting new magic will be impossible. Lily explained all of this with pure infectious enthusiasm. However, he spots a crucial detail. Since the summoning magic is still active, there must be another way to manifest a spell. As Oscar tries to devise a plan, one of the monsters suddenly launches a cheap shot from behind. The beast lunges forward, sinking its teeth into his left arm, and Ayan thinks it is already over. Oscar refuses to yield, and as he closes his eyes, something incredible begins to happen. He conjures a massive fire bullet, blasting straight through the beast and hitting the giant elephant Familiar. Ian panics at the sight, demanding to know how he can possibly use magic in this situation. Oscar shocks him by revealing he saw the formula inside the beast. He can cast magic if it is not exposed to the air, leaving his arm covered in blood. But Ayan is far more terrified that Oscar can actually read the formula running inside his summon. Desperately demands to know how Oscar pulled that off without even holding a wand. First, Levin and his lackeys manage to fight off a few beasts using their hyped-up noble teamwork. And trust me, you and I are going to watch him absorb this knowledge and claim his true destiny. And Oscar proves he can cast magic without a wand. With me to see what happens next. Let's dive right into this scene. His sweat is dripping down Ayan's face as he struggles to accept that Oscar can cast high-level magic with just a simple flick of his fingers. Oscar gets ready to strike, but Ayan refuses to lose, desperately summoning a massive wall of magic circles. But it is completely useless, as Oscar's refined flames instantly sweep through and incinerate everything in their path. Ayan watches in absolute terror as his spell is utterly crushed. Not believe a seasoned mage like him is losing, furiously accusing Oscar of hiding his true strength. He assumes Oscar cannot unleash another devastating attack, but the boy coldly replies that he won't even need to. Now pay close attention here. Ayan suddenly realizes that his wand is shattered, meaning he is now completely defenseless. It completely paralyzes him when Oscar asks how long he can survive without it, sending him straight to his knees to pathetically beg for mercy. He promises to leave him alone forever, desperately offering to tell him absolutely everything he wants to know. Alright, you and I are about to witness this madness, where our main character believes he can control the mana everywhere. In his panic, he even offers to recommend Oscar for a prestigious apprentice rank, which is normally a massive honor. But Oscar is not moved by any of this and simply asks if he is finally done with his useless deals. He reassures him that he will not kill him, preferring to let him publicly confess to all of his crimes. I know what you're thinking. We thought this was over, but suddenly Ayan charges toward his elephant familiar to pull a crazy stunt. Calling him a mere commoner, he activates a forbidden magic circle that wraps around both of them, instantly fusing man and beast together. Oscar watches in absolute shock and horror as this guy completely merges with the hideous monster. Without a second thought, Ayan starts attacking in a blind rage. He shatters the ground and forces Oscar back, who realizes the man has completely lost his mind. Just as Oscar prepares to unleash his full power to completely end this, a sudden barrier of wind traps the monster. The director descends majestically from above, radiating a massive and utterly overwhelming aura. After all, a true swordsman must use every single sense just to dodge death. And that is where we leave things today, with the director praising Oscar and telling him to leave the rest to the adults. Even if he is no longer the sword saint, those brutal reflexes from his past life remain fully intact. He is absolutely sure he can feel this invisible current of raw power. After focusing for a moment, he suddenly spots glowing purple threads floating all around the room. His face lights up with absolute joy. He has finally managed to see the mana. Now he just needs to draw it into his circuit. In detail, he has no idea how to actually do it, because he never bothered to ask. Leaping down from the rock, he notices something bizarre in the distance, an incredibly dense concentration of energy. Oscar steps into the dark area, shocked to find that there is absolutely nobody alive in there.